Hello, everyone. My name is D.R. Rawson, and I'm the Executive Director for Lights There in Arizona, Utah, Nevada, and New Mexico and Southern California. And I was asked to present this topic of business development with a mask on. My apologies. Some of you wanted to attend this earlier on, but uh, some issues precluded me from being able to deliver it back then. So I want to give it to you now. So hopefully this will be something that will benefit you, and we'll get in this together. All right. So this is a live webinar that's been recorded later, but I think that's okay. Let's talk about this. If I can get it to go down, there we go. So it was originally scheduled for August 4th, 2020 at noon. And my apologies again that it didn't get delivered then. But we think that now is a pretty good time to do it because we're still all struggling with the issue of having to wear a mask while we're making calls. Our company's experienced a lot of different issues with COVID-19, and I want to share some of those with you and see if those would be of benefit. I'll move my little circle up here out of the way. So, first of all, there's a number of things that take into consideration. Businesses that are fully open, obviously partially open, selectively open sometimes, maybe by appointment, open but not seeing anyone, then closed temporarily and closed permanently. And at least our company has experienced that in virtually everything we do every day. We come across one or more of those. So I wanted to talk to you about that and ask you, is that holding you back? Do you see that as an impediment to getting more business? I hope not, because I think there's a better way to do this, and I want to discuss that with you today. One of the things I also want to bring out is that too often we see these things as an issue and then forget to ask ourselves, is it someone else or is it me? And I'll share a story with you here in a minute that may help illustrate that point. So the question becomes, why do you think you're not succeeding? Do you see others succeeding, so therefore you're not? I don't think that's true. But I want to talk about prospecting with this mask kind of thing on and talk about prospecting in general. Years ago, I owned a company that when I bought it, I said, so what's the best way to prospect for this company? And I was told the best way to do that was to look for smokestacks. Well, back then we were selling to steel companies and manufacturing companies. And so they had overhead lifts and things that we sold: wire, rope, chain, cable, poles, all kinds of different devices. So we sold those into those bigger companies. So a lot of little companies that we see today in small manufacturing strip areas were not even available back then. But I quickly realized that some of our bigger business might be in those places that didn't have smokestacks. So I widened my horizons a bit, and lo and behold, we increased the amount of business the company was doing tremendously. So I'm asking you, are you saying to yourself, well, businesses are closed because of the pandemic, people are not letting us in, or that we have to make appointments or whatever? And I'm saying to you, don't let that be your reason for not succeeding, because it shouldn't be. You should go out and decide what works and what doesn't for yourself. And if there's a business closed, the business is closed. A friend of mine, Mike Cavanaugh, who worked for me in a couple of my companies that I've had in the past, Mike has the best philosophy towards sales that I've ever seen. He sold a product at one time that the commission, this goes back a number of years, was $1,000. And he found out that if he called on 10 people, he would make one sale. So he played a little mind game with himself, and he said, every time somebody said, no, we can't see you, no, we're not interested, whatever it was, he said, well, I just made $100. And he would go on and go on. And when he got to that 10th one, he'd make a sale typically, and that paid him $1,000. So he was earning his way towards $1,000. You might want to consider that as you're out there, even with a mask on. I know it's harder. I know it seems a little awkward and inconvenient, but what we do when we go out and call on people is primarily looking for somebody that needs the solution that we offer. If you're not solution selling, I really can't help you much, because I really don't feel that selling today is anything like it was 40, 50 years ago when I first began. Selling today is all about solution selling. We have a product or service that they either need or they don't. If they don't, you can jump up and down and scream and yell and say, well, why don't you need this? And all the kinds of things that somebody might tell you, but it's not going to get you the deal. People today are more concerned about the bottom line. So the question becomes, are you? Are you looking to improve their bottom line, or are you just looking for a payday? You can improve their bottom line even if it's not a direct number. You can improve the quality of the business. You can improve the service. You can improve so many things that sometimes aren't necessarily directly reflected in the bottom line, but may be indirectly reflected, and that their business grows, but they can't tie it exactly to your product or service. So if you're thinking that you're not succeeding, look at this list. Is it because of the pandemic? Because they don't use enough of your product? Because they don't know your product exists? Because the product's too expensive? Because you can't make as many sales calls as you did? Or is it just because you're full of excuses? I have a number of salespeople that work for me in these various states, and one of them I particularly like. His name is Jim. Most salespeople work on a shotgun principle. He would rather sit back and shoot one and make it the one that counts. So he does his research, he comes up with the right names, he understands what their problem is, and then he goes in and presents. And when he does, there's a very high closing ratio because he clearly understands what their problem is and he can provide a solution. And what we sell are LED lights, and soon we'll be selling a light that kills COVID-19 in the air. So Jim's a great salesperson, and he's somebody who doesn't let anybody else's opinion get in his way or any other circumstance to get in his way. Pandemic, mask, the fact that he can't go from business to business to business, it's okay. He just takes his shot, his rifle shot, and gets right to the point. So I might ask you, what are your rifle shots? Do you have some prospects that you can just zone in on and then perhaps get that business? You need to look at that seriously. Clients, customers, and challenges. You'll always have them. There's no way you can get away from it. It'll be different with virtually every industry, but that's okay. Have you identified their challenges? What keeps them from using your product, your service, using you? What are those challenges? Have you identified them, or do you just react to them when they come up? Something to consider. You understand what the benefits are at the time and under these circumstances. You know, one of the things that I spend a lot of time going over with the salespeople that work for me is the situation that that client is experiencing and what the benefits to them might be for our service and product. It's different with virtually everyone, obviously, but you have to take the time to rationally think that through. What's that have to do with a mask? Honestly, nothing. The mask or no mask, you're still going to have to take the time to do that. So what does that say? The mask may sound like it's an impediment to making sales and getting out there, but it's not. It's just something more. I'm old enough to remember when the salesmen before me all wore hats. In fact, one of my early clients, who was a steel company, required that all of his salespeople have a hat on the rack that was behind the back seat. Many of you may not know that that's called a package shelf. And on that package shelf, he required that every salesman have a hat just in case the client he was calling on preferred that men wear hats. Well, we've long since passed that time. But things change. So we have to understand, what are their circumstances? What's their buying motivation? Is somebody pressuring them? Is it a need for the business? Is it something that their bottom line is lagging in? What are those issues? And have you clearly sat down and just tried to define them? And while you're doing that, while you're trying to define that, ask yourself this question: what differentiates you from the competition? What makes you different? There's a lot of people out there that sell LED lights. Talk about what differentiates you from your competitors. Now, in this environment, is there something unique that you're doing or can do, or some unique way in which you can help that client that others might not ordinarily be able to do? As I mentioned earlier, ours is the fact that we can finance what we do, and so there's no out-of-pocket expense. So what are those things now? So what are the new rules, or are there any rules at all about engagement with your client or customer? And would you change anything about what you do and when you do your work? You see, I think, unfortunately, most of us look through the same lens all the time. When something like COVID-19 hits, we're not sure which lens to look through. I mean, we've always done it a certain way. So why would we change? Why would it be different? Why would we do something completely different that we hadn't done before? But we need to look at it differently. Always. When the circumstance changes, grab another lens, take a look at it from a different perspective. So there you have it. That's the words of wisdom, if any, that I can give you. But I really believe having a mask on makes absolutely no difference. Perhaps in your mind it does, but not really. So think about it. Perhaps something I've said here will be of benefit to you. If you have any questions, you can reach me at my office, 702-990-1719. This is D.R. Rawson saying thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful day.